All right, so we'll start right at 9:30 today. Welcome to season 8 of Environmental Fridays. It is personal. Um, Here is a photo gallery of our speakers for season 8, and you will hear more about this person here today, Niesha Douglas. You'll hear more from her. And if you want to get some more information about our speakers, about what Environmental Fridays is all about, you could go to Google, just type in Environmental Fridays Facebook group, for example, and that would lead you, the first few hits actually will get you there. Same thing with our YouTube playlist. Go to Google Environmental Fridays YouTube playlist, and that will give you the playlist from all of our seasons so far. I think this QR code is for this current season, season 8. So we've been going through here this month, and we are halfway through, well, pretty much the end, actually. Today is February 21st. Our speaker today is Niesha Douglas, and you'll hear more about her soon. And her topic deals with pathways to food justice. Next week, to close out this month of February, we'll be looking at poverty and the environment. And our speaker there is Delia Paul. Believe she works at Earth Negotiations Bulletin. So just a quick thing to say that we, for the last 2 weeks or so now, been sponsored and in partnership with the American Chemical Society, ACS, their Committee on Minority Affairs. It's a big deal because the ACS is one of the world's largest specialized science organizations. So hopefully this will help to increase our audience and impact of Environmental Fridays. So all of you who were on, have been on, probably started hearing the conversation that Sonia and I had. So she's actually been a co-host, I think twice before, at least once, and she's also been a guest speaker. So she's been aware of and participating in our Environmental Fridays. She's back here today. And the bio I have of her is outdated to some degree. So Sonia, tell us the updates.
Absolutely, Desmond. Thank you guys for having me back. The bio is a little bit outdated on that slide. Currently, I am a medical student, first year medical student at Stanford. Before this, I was a graduate student at Harvard, and prior to that, I majored in biological sciences and Russian studies and minored in sociology at the University of Illinois at Chicago. My research predominantly focuses on improving health infrastructure, identifying medical deserts, looking at the intersection of environment and health, and better understanding the fundamental causes of disease to create better public health initiatives. I'm also really passionate about teaching and empowering students, and my larger goal in life is to become a physician and teacher who improves health equity and pursues interdisciplinary research to help with public health issues. So
Yes,
thank you once again for having me, Desmond.
so thanks for getting all this training that will be very important in the current climate in which we are. Um, and the focus and your passion is something that's going to be needed for years to come. Again, given the climate that we are currently in, that doesn't even want to say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. So develop your weapons well, deploy them strategically, and you could be assured that you have partners here uh, with you moving forward. So
Mhm.
thanks again for being a co-host with us, participating. Could you now go ahead and introduce our speaker for today?
Absolutely. Well, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Niesha Douglas, who is an educator, author, and researcher. Dr. Douglas has over 15 years of experience in higher education and over 10 years of experience in food systems. Dr. Douglas is a community activist that believes in giving back to the community and helping that helped her grow and develop into the professional and leader she is today. She has served on several committees regarding food insecurity and hunger. In 2021, she co-authored a book on food insecurity entitled Everybody Eats: Communication and the Paths to Food Justice. Currently, Dr. Douglas is a community-based research scholar at the Center for Environmental and Farming Systems at North Carolina State University, studying food systems in rural southeastern North Carolina. She has a doctorate degree from UNC Charlotte in adult and community education. Let's give it up for Dr. Douglas.
All right, very good.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to just talk about food and just talk about our relationship with food and community. And I'm just excited. Thank you so much. Very impressive, Sonia, with your accomplishments. Anytime I see women in the sciences, I'm excited about that because I know that you definitely work hard. So congratulations. Um, to matriculating through this academic world and this medical and science world. Congratulations. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen. Just a couple of slides that I have that hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
But yeah, okay. So again, yeah, my name is Dr. Niesha Douglas. I work for the Center for Environmental Farming Systems at NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been in that position for about 2 years. Prior to that, I worked as a professor at Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is near Fort Bragg. And then prior to that, I was just doing a lot of community work on my own within the food system. So I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between health and sports management to food insecurity and food sciences. So I have like this array of knowledge when it comes to health and food and communication and connection that we have with food and relationship that we have with food. So I'll go. So I started off, it's interesting, my career has been all over the place, honestly. Like I started off as a athletic trainer for North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. And then from there, I got a master's degree in sports management, High Point University. And so I had been working in sports management for about, I would say about 7 years. And the path that I got into food because my background is not agriculture, and my background is really not in the sciences in that aspect, but my background is community. And so when I was receiving my doctorate degree at UNC Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina, I was at home. I had a 1-year-old, and I was just going through the motions as a doctoral student and just really trying to balance life, trying balance being a mother and balance being a scholar at the same time. And if anybody on here has a child, parenting is hard, and then trying to balance going to school full time, especially being in a doc program. And so it was very timing, and I didn't have a lot of time to really dedicate to anything. So, but I lived in a neighborhood, and I'm from a neighborhood where our department, health department in our county designated as a food desert. And so at that moment, this is back in 2008. And so at that moment, I didn't know what that meant. Like, what is a food desert? Because, I've always had access to food, always had access to a car, transportation to be able to go to get food, never was hungry. my grandmother raised me, so I was living in my grandmother's house and she fed people, so it just really wasn't a issue for us. But in my particular community, specifically my area code, they said, well, there's other people in your community that have issues with getting to grocery stores. And so they looked at the average income in the area, and so they said, okay, these are the health outcomes for the people that live in this area, so it's a food desert. Okay, fine. And then after that, they started to try to come up with ways or develop ways in which they can increase access to local foods. And one of those ways was to create a farmers market in the neighborhood. And so there were community members, older community members, that they had a coalition and they would go to these meetings with the city officials, with the county, and then they would have conversations, right, about how they could increase access and revitalize and build a neighborhood. Because the neighborhood that I'm from is a historic neighborhood. It's the first Black neighborhood in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the land was given to them after the Reconstruction era to a lot of enslaved individuals. They were given to by a Quaker by the name of Yardley Warner, in which he gave them about 40 plus acres of land. And so that the enslaved people can come and rebuild their lives after slavery ended. And so that kind of created a community of people that were just resilient. And then they built their own, movie theaters, laundromats, everything. So, and then once they rezoned it back in the 1950s, then a lot of those Black owned businesses were pushed out. And so it became an area that was kind of desolate, where they started adding public housing and government housing. And so it's the community is very rich in culture, and the community members who were there from the beginning want to be able to preserve that culture, and don't want the stigma put onto the community as it being a poor community, a desolate community. Nothing can grow there, nothing can thrive there. And so one particular person, leader in our community, his name was Otis Harrison. His father and his father's father had a church in the community, which was a staple. It was a Baptist church, and it was the first church that was in that community. And so he became a leader, and he asked me. He said, "Niesha, can you come to these meetings, because they're not listening to us, and we need somebody to be able to advocate for us." And speak their language, pretty much. And at first, a lot of time, it took about 4 or 5 times for him to convince me to go to these meetings, because in my mind, I'm like, well, I have a daughter, I have a lot of stuff to do. I have to read, I have to write, I have to, I'm taking her to daycare, I'm bringing her home, I got to cook, I got to clean, I got to tend. And so he was like, can you please just come to one meeting? So I was like, okay, I obliged. I went to a meeting, and as I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm listening to the city council members and the community and the county members, officials, and just some leaders in the community, they're talking over the community members that were there, and they were not listening. No, they literally said, well, this is what you need. We're going to do this for you. We're going to do that. And they just kind of made them feel like they were not seen and they were not heard. So I just kind of started speaking up on their behalf. I said, you have to stop and be able to understand the culture of this particular community. Stop insisting that your help is needed, where, we've been able to thrive without you for a couple of years. And if it wasn't for the redistricting of the city, we still will be able to be thriving in our community. And so, they stopped and they started listening. And I just kind of, it helped a lot that I was a doctorate student and I knew what I was talking about and I knew about research. So they just started listening. From there, I would be invited to go to these different meetings, and I was the person that was the advocate or the liaison of the community, and they would try to talk to me for me to talk to people in the community, and it just became a thing. And so out of that, we were able to identified that our particular community was at the top list back in 2009, 2010. We were number one, tied with I think it was Berkeley, California, was another city in California with being the most food insecurity nation. And it's interesting because North Carolina is an ag state. Like we have NC State, we have North Carolina E&T, 1890 land grant universities and institutions that um, started off in agriculture and focusing on agriculture and growing food. And so we felt like that was, first of all, we were embarrassed by it, and we just was trying to figure out how can we get ourselves off that list. And so from there, we decided to um, we decided to create these different programs and initiatives throughout, and support these program initiatives throughout the city that would help increase access to local food. So not just the community that I live in, but the other communities in the Greensboro and High Point area. And from there, we had a farmers market that was developed in my community. And from there, it turned into a community garden, and it's still there today. It went through some changes, but we still have one at the church there today. We also had a shared kitchen. We wrote grants for shared use kitchens to be created so people can come and who wouldn't have had access to a kitchen to be able to sell their products. They were able to utilize that kitchen for a very, very low cost. And we were able to provide funding for gap insurance for farmers. And it's just a lot of, then we had food trucks, and then we were able to create all of these different program initiatives that would increase local access to food. Then we had a mobile market, which we would provide fresh and local foods to different communities where people didn't have to go to the grocery store. They can just come to the mobile market truck that's parked in their neighborhood and get fresh food. So all of that to say that there were some issues. There were some challenges that we had. There were some celebrations that we had. And we decided to chronicle that and put that in a book. And the book is called Everybody Eats: Communication, the Path to Food Justice. My other co-author, Dr. Marianne LaGreco, she works at UNCG, University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and she's a communications professor. And at the time, I was still in graduate school. And so she was like, well, this will help with your CV. Do you want to co-author this? And I can't write it without you because you were a part of the process. And so we were able to gather all of this information from the case studies that we had, invited people who were part of the process to be able to contribute some articles within the book. And from there, we seemed like we was moving forward, and then COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, we had a food council, we had a mobile market, we had a co-op that was that the city helped support and help fund. Like all of these things were happening, and it was like good things. And then when COVID hit, a lot of farmers took hits. Some of them were able to thrive, and some of them were not able to thrive because they get a lot of people, they go to the farmers market to sell their produce. And if they don't go to the farmers market, then they can't sell their produce because where they're located, people are not going to go to their farm. They don't have a farm stand. And then all the other programs where the restaurants were shut down in some cases. And so it just kind of put a monkey wrench into the progress that we had made. And when the next the FRAC report came out on the Fruit Research and I think committee something, they deemed our area, we went from number 1 to like number 9 or number 10. And so we knew that we were making progress and it was great, but as in life, things change. There were a couple of people that started off with us that passed away. And then there were a couple of people that moved jobs. They moved out of the city or they moved out of the state. And so those were some of the challenges that we had when it came to just continuing the path of food justice and be able to walk that path and be able to move towards success. And the lessons that were learned in that particular process was that we we were just trying stuff out. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know that we needed permission to do a lot of stuff from the city. And that took time because a lot of times when you are trying to create something in a neighborhood, you have to get permits or you have to get permission from the city. And so that took time. And then, once you get the community involved and get them ready and get them, excited about what's coming, because the process takes so long and because you have to get, permission to do a lot of stuff, then they lose interest. And that was a lesson that was learned. Like, we had to have our ducks in a row and make sure we had all of these things ready to go before we started advertising that this is what we were going to do. So that was a lesson learned. And then through all of that, I'm still in graduate school. I'm still trying to graduate. I ended up graduating, but I went back to teaching. And so we just, after that, I felt like I was doing two dissertations. Like, I was writing a book and I also was doing my own research at the same time. So it became very overwhelming and I had to take a step back. And then also coupled with COVID, it was just a lot to take on. So I took a step back from food justice and food insecurity for a while because I think I realized that, in some cases, when you're working with government or when you're working with local government, then a lot of times they don't want to get rid of the problem, but they want to keep throwing money at the problem. And so I remember one time going to a meeting after we did all of this stuff. I went to like a meeting with a foundation, and they started talking about food insecurity. Oh, and this is what we need to do, and this and this and that. And I'm thinking, did you read our book? Did you do your research behind saying what we need to do? Because all of this stuff has already been done in this area. And, it just seems like you just want to throw money at a cause without doing the research to see how you could support that cause. So it was definitely challenging. And again, lessons were learned. People learned. There were some clashes in certain cases. We butt heads with the local government and city council a lot, and just trying to push back on some things that they wanted to do. But all in the voice of community. We were really trying to give community a voice so that they would be seen and heard. Because these policies that are created in our government directly affect them. And so if we could at least talk to local government and just give them different options of how they can solve problems, then perhaps we can be that voice for the community, and so they can be listened to or they can be heard. But it was a long 10 years. Honestly, it gave me a lot of insight, and that was really why I have the job that I have today, is because I did a lot of volunteering during that time, volunteering while I was doing my doctorate degree and raising a child. So I guess after all of that, I was able to secure a position in an area that I didn't go to school for, which was great. And it's something that I really had passion about, but since I do have skills in research, I was able to combine both, and my background in community and adult education, I was able to combine both and move forward and help people in other parts of the state. So very fortunate that I was able to do that. But so yeah, I mean, I think the way we think about community is that sometimes we think of community as it being just the people that we live around. And that's not always the case, because people have their different definitions of community. And to me, it's just a shared responsibility or shared interest in wanting to build something that benefits all and not just benefits some, right? And it had me thinking about, where's my community, who's within my community, and why it's important for us to speak up for people who don't have a voice, who feel like they don't have a voice. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that, and I hold that dear to my heart. And I feel like now I could be an expert in that. But um, it's something that you can't really teach in graduate school, how to speak to people, how to talk to people, how to relate to people. Is something that really cannot be taught. I mean, you can go through sociology classes and psychology classes and understand the way people think, but at the same time, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to speak people's language. We talked about code switching yesterday in one of my meetings. And typically when we think of code switching, we think of like a different dialect that people would use. And I explained that, yeah, I do code switch a lot when I'm speaking to certain people, but that's based on communication and based on people understanding what I'm saying. And so I wouldn't speak to, for example, I wouldn't speak to you all at the way I would speak to my sister or the way I would speak to my mom, because you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. And but also a form of code switching is being able to assimilate to a certain degree when you go into these neighborhoods and you try to gather research or gather data. You have to be able to come in where you would want to feel safe in that particular community instead of wanting to always stand out, because sometimes that doesn't fare well, especially if you're a person of color and you go into rural areas where you might be one of only two people that are there. And so in order for you to feel safe, you might have to speak a certain way, or you might have to explain things a certain way that you wouldn't normally do. But that's okay. But it's all about being able to communicate. Communication is always the key to that's related to anything that we do. And then we also think about food. Food is life. Food is resilience. Food is art. Food is how we convene with people. Food is a conversation starter, right? Anytime we want to meet somebody or we want to get to know somebody better, sometimes we do that over a meal, right? We talk to people because food connects us all. And so to me, it feels disingenuous, and we're doing people a disservice if they don't have access to food, because food is communication as well. We have people that come from other countries that have their way of gathering and their own type of food and culture that creates conversation, and that's how we connect to people. And that's something that we try to get other people to understand, people who are in these power positions, to understand why food is so important. Because when people don't have proper access to food, they can't, it's hard for them you can't really live, right? You can't function the way you should be able to function if you don't have proper access to food. And then when I'm learning that in rural areas that, people don't have a lot of transportation, like they don't have buses and Uber and all of these different ways of going back and forth that we do in urban areas. Like they actually have to have a car, because it might take them 2 hours, 3 hours to walk to the farmer's market or to walk to a grocery store, because they live so far away and it's so spread out. But um, but yeah, these are some of the concerns that rural America that I work in now, that they have in with their access to food, even though there's so much farmland. People could potentially grow their own food because they have land, but again, that's political. The land that you grow on has to be considered farmland, designated through the USDA or the Department of Agriculture, to be able to farm that land. So yeah, it's one of those things where I think we all could reflect on in our practice when we're communicating with people, what that really means, and what community means within our own practice, and how we can apply some principles of community within our practice, and to be able to help us learn more about ourselves and also learn more about others. So that's basically it. I wanted to leave it open for some questions, or we can just have a conversation about what community means to you. I ask this question a lot with students, like, what is your definition of community? And so I want to start off with that, to get us kind of engaged a little bit with this idea of community. So I'll go ahead and put the question out there. What is your definition of community? And then how do you see community, building your community relational to your practice?
So let's, I would say, Sonia, you want to get us started in answering that question and probably, asking your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Douglas, that's a great question. Um, well, for me, the way I see community, it's layered, if that makes sense. So you have your immediate community, the people who work with you on a daily basis and or the people you interact with on a daily basis or a quite often basis. Then if you expand that further, you have your community in terms of the people who you reach in some way, shape, or form and might not have as much face time with, but the work that you do, or sort of like how the resources that you utilize or the resources you work on help support them as well. So that's sort of like my tiered approach to it. It's more the direct community and the indirect.
Okay. Like sort of like this ecological system, like macro, micro type thing. I can kind of equate that to Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory, where you have like micro and macro systems, and within those macro systems, you have certain groups of people or certain communities. Okay, yes, Bridget, I see that you raised your hand.
Well, it's amazing because I was going to speak to the community concept because of something you said in terms of what's a bit frustrated right now. I think that we do not need to, in these days, I'm just speaking to these times when so much is shutting down, and I feel you when you talk about the things that are shutting down. We're experiencing that globally, and especially here in the US. Community for me is not only that geographic phenomenon that we are in the same space, but I think the host just alluded to our praxis, what we do in common. And I think that you have some fantastic ideas to be shared in community, meaning if you share it, I do not need a big plot of land to be approved by USDA. I can take your practices, your good practices, and have my own garden in my own 2x4 plot and succeed. We can succeed in these days because of shared ideas in community. So I thank you today for that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's always appreciative for people because sometimes, when you do presentations, you're like, do people understand what I'm saying? But yeah, I think we all have a greater understanding of what community is, especially nowadays. Like we have to rely on our community in order for us to get through, certain aspects of life specifically. And honestly, like when I first started off in this, it was like I was feeling, I was like, well, I don't really talk with people in my neighborhood because I was so disconnected. And when you're doing, when you're in a program, you're really isolated because you have to focus. You become recluse in a way because you don't have a lot of time to go out and play with your friends, or you don't have a lot of time to talk to people because you have so much work that they put on you in this program that you don't have time to do any of that. And once you get a break in your classes or a break in your courses, you just want to like sleep, or you just want to relax, you just want to rest, you don't want to talk to people. But what I learned in this particular journey is that I didn't have to be so recluse, but I can still be able to impart some of my wisdom or be a part of a group or a community that was very helpful because I would always bring my daughter with me when I would go to some of these meetings, and then there would be somebody that's like, if I'm speaking and I'm trying to watch her at the same time, there would be like a church person and say, I got her. Like, we'll go over here and we'll go play. And so you can focus. And so that's community, right? Like that was very helpful for me in a moment in time because it's hard to focus when you're trying to see what a child is doing at the same time. It's very hard. Women, we are good, but we sometimes we're not that good, right? We still, I can't multitask in that moment where I'm trying to focus on, a concern, but I'm also looking to see if she's like picking up stuff, putting it in her mouth or whatever. But yeah, so that I learned a lot about what community meant in that moment in time. And I didn't, I felt bad in a way because I was like, man, I've grown up around this neighborhood a lot of times, and I never really spoke to a lot of people that was not in my age, because these were people that were older than me. And so I would see them, but I would really, just speak to the people that was in my age bracket or that went to school with me. And so, yeah, so it was like relearning the people that were already always there. Is it Rasa?
Rasta, yeah.
Yeah, it's Rasa. I just want to reinforce what you're saying is so powerful, and I fully agree with everything you've said so far about community and just food insecurity and fighting it together in general. I am working on a project where I'm trying to focus on fighting food insecurity in a selected city in the Inland Empire in California, where food insecurity is very prevalent. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for me starting off trying to reach out to organizations to volunteer, or if you think like a specific method is more impactful. I'm kind of like intimidated by like all of it because I don't want to make these short connections and then kind of like use people for their words without hearing their stories and really empowering them through their narratives, through my research.
Yeah, that's a good question. People always ask me that question. One thing that I found valuable is that um, if for example, if you're going to a specific neighborhood that you don't live in, but you need to gather information or gather data, like just show up at times where, where they see your face. You might go to an event, you might go to a farmer's market or a farm stand, or somewhere in the park where people are having a good time. Just show up and, just be a part of the crowd, or, try to like not really infiltrate, but just try to, have conversations with people outside of what the work that you're trying to do, because you
Yeah.
don't want to seem exploitive in a
Yeah,
way where
exactly.
yeah, when you're going in, you're just taking information and you're not giving anything back. You have to give back in some way. And if that means volunteering at a church, or if that means volunteering at a food bank, or somewhere in that community, then, that's what I would do, because people appreciate, the help that that you're giving them, especially, sometimes they don't mind giving out information, but also it's not fair that you're getting something from them and you're not giving them something back. And that's what we do sometimes as researchers. Like, we might put in our grant or in our budget some incentives, like give them a gift card or food or something like that. But sometimes that's also exploitive. Like he's like, here's this
Yeah, it's like here,
15,
get
yeah,
some
15,
food.
$20 Walmart gift card or something. Thank you for talking to me. Like,
It's a
but
little performative. I don't want
it
to
is.
participate in
It is
that.
very performative. So, just volunteer and just be a part of the community. And then you start making ties with people, and then you stay in contact with people. So if anything comes across your desk that you feel like could help an organization, you can send it to. Just stay in contact with them and just be a part of, just listen to them and be a part of their community there. And sometimes they'll open up and be willing to just give you information.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna put someone on the spot. But before I do, I can't recall or remember the name of your community and the church and all of that you were speaking about, but I can't remember the name of your community.
It's Warnersville.
Warnersville,
Warnersville. Yeah.
spelled Warnes.
Or Warnersville, Warnersville.
Okay.
Hmm?
So I know there is somebody online right now that is very excited hearing you speak about food deserts, mobile food trucks, and writing grants for it.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Princess?
Oh boy, yes. Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Hello.
The latter is the one that just came up on writing grants, but first I want to tell you thank you for this conversation and making it so real, like we know you. And actually, someone in my family knows you. And I just found out a couple minutes ago. His name is LaShawn. You both went to North Carolina Central, and
Yeah.
that's my nephew.
Okay.
And so his dad is my brother, and his dad here in where Desmond is owns a restaurant. And so one thing about our restaurant is that everything is homemade and everything is try to be as organic. We go to farmers when we can. Even for our meat, we go to farmers and butchers. But we started a garden and just trying to help out our community. And we actually were on 17 acres, so it kind of helped. But everything you were saying, the ups and downs, COVID came, we stopped. But one thing that happened, and then what I wanted to know where you were from, because Sean is actually from Brevard, North Carolina. But
Mhm.
again, he went to school in North
At
and
Central.
Central, and then
Mhm.
yeah, now he's in his doctor's degree at the one that Michael Jordan does not go to. I get him.
Carolina.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
attends there now. And so I've been there several times for his graduation. And he actually worked for us, Dr. Murray, if you remember,
I remember.
AmeriCorps grant. He helped us with environmental issues, environmental dates, and just trying to help our community here in Southwest Michigan. So hearing you is so important. And then you're talking about food justice. And we've been talking about this for so long, but to hear someone that has actually put a whole program in action has really meant a lot. And you have inspired us because we have two tractors now, one good one, one bad one.
Mhm.
But there's so many trials and tribulations, but that's life.
Mhm.
But and now we listening to what we're going through in our country, and to you identifying these food deserts or food justice or injustices is really an inspiration to us. So I'm so glad you're on here. And I love how you're just meeting us where we are. And I think most of us can take a little, or if not a lot, of something that you've said. It was something else you said. I'm going to actually get the recording of it talking about what food is. It was so powerful when you said it. And then I did want to get a copy of your book. And so there's just so much. I was going to wait to after the program and let others speak so I don't speak too long, as Dr. Murray will tell you, because I'm excited listening to you. Your words have inspired us here in Southwest Michigan. Actually, I'm hoping that you and Sean and your baby, your child, could come and visit us maybe this summer and help us along the way if the biggest thing would be inspiring. But one thing I wanted to touch on is that people say, oh, black folks are lazy. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. Or Americans, they would say. And that is so untrue. We had Miss Millie who owned a beauty salon for like, I don't know, before I came here, 20, 30 years. She was our leader. We had old people coming out with their canes and walkers out in the garden helping us, making sure we knew exactly how to weed. Because we had young people coming out loving working in our garden, and which I would say our farm because it was so large. You know, we actually only turned an acre or two for the garden, and we can actually extend that so much more. And we're looking to do that. And so, but they were not lazy. They came out, they worked hard, and there's nothing like a ripe tomato. I will tell you that we grew up with a garden in our house growing up with seven children. So we had a garden growing up in another smaller town in Michigan where Sean actually lived for a short amount of time. But with that being said, thank you for inspiring us. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. What's LaShawn's last name? Do you play football?
So ironic. He went to college on a football scholarship from Brevard in high school, Harper.
Harper.
So
Okay.
HARP. He
Yeah.
said he's like he's trying to get on the call now because he's at work. So he's like, oh man, I'm gonna try to get on the call, but I'm at work right now. I know her.
Oh,
It's great, you know.
yeah. Small world, right?
Yeah, it's such a small world. He goes, yeah, we went to both of the schools together. So Central and the other one. So anyway,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so and
Well, I did have one small question though.
okay.
You were talking about how you were able to identify your community as a food desert. What, if you could share later or now, where can we go to get those type of statistics?
Okay. Okay, yeah. So I personally did not identify our my community as a food desert. It was the department Gifford County Health Department. So
Mhm.
if you go to your health department, they have statistics should be in on their website as far as like what's considered a food desert. And I want to talk quickly specifically about language because language is very important in this aspect. Because when I brought this up a lot, I was like, when you say that a particular county or community is a food desert, when I think of desert, I think of desolate. I think of no life, right? I think of just sand, hot, no life, nothing's growing there. I said, so be careful when you put, when you designate certain areas and you put a specific word and language on these areas as if these areas cannot thrive. Like what I said before is that our community was kind of like Black Wall Street in Tulsa and in Durham, North Carolina. We had everything. We had everything. We didn't need to go across the tracks to go get anything else because everything was grown in our community. People grew food, people had grocery stores and laundromats and beauty salons and barbershops and movie theaters. And so we didn't have to go anywhere because everything was in our community. And so, when the county said, oh, this is a food desert, I said, please be careful with that language because you're saying nothing can grow in. And that's not true. That it was designated farmland years ago until you start building on top of it. And so we can still grow food. Like the soil is still good. You can still put a seed in the ground and things will grow, right? So it's this thing about I don't like when they use food desert. So now they're trying to say food swamps or food sovereignty and all these different types of words that they want to put on certain areas. But to me, I didn't think that reflected our community at all, being called a food desert, because I've never experienced hunger. I never experienced not being able to the grocery store. And the people that we lived in like a cul-de-sac. So the people that live in our cul-de-sac and really on our street didn't experience that either. Because there was always a person who you could go to. We had a candy lady. We had a person who grew tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers every single summer. And so they would give them out to people. And so to me, we always had access to food. I think it was like the county's description again, because of their redistricting in the early 1950s or early 1950s, then you put us in a predicament where we had to move out. So it's almost like you created the food desert and then you deemed it a food desert, right? Like it was never a food desert. We always had fertile land. The land was already there for us to be able to grow food. And you can still grow food. There's people are growing food now, going back to having like their container gardens or small gardens where they're growing food. Like I had like a little plot in my grandmother's house when I was living there and I grew food. Unfortunately, the animals liked it so much that they ate most of it. But it's okay because animals got to eat too, right? So but it was just one of those things where the language I don't like when they label people in a negative way, like has like a negative like connotation to it. That's just one of the things that kind of bother me, annoy me.
Can
But
you give us some description of your community, like population and, other stuff like that?
so within my community, it's adjacent to downtown. So like literally a railroad track does like separate that our community from downtown and other parts of the community. But I would say about 10,000 people live in that community. It's like there were two housing projects, there were one three elementary schools, and now it's only one elementary school because the other elementary school they got rid of and turned into a cultural center actually. They just knocked down the some housing projects that were there, and they're going to put condos over there. So we're going through a gentrification period now in that neighborhood, and so they're petitioning people that own their houses, of course, in the neighborhood to try to sell to developers. And fortunately, we were able to. One of the leaders a couple of years ago was able to designate our particular community as a historic community, so they can't do but so much, right? According to the county and zoning and things. And so fortunately we was able to do that, but it doesn't stop like certain areas from being rebuilt.
Right.
So yeah, and then we have within a mile and a half, there's we have a grocery store, one grocery store left. We had three. So we have like there were two that left and two came back. So we have like three grocery stores, and of course, we have like all the fast food restaurants so on the side of town. And that's another thing that another question that came up, like, how come we don't have a Whole Foods? But of course, Whole Foods doesn't really look at certain areas to have, to build their stores. And so yeah, and then after COVID, a lot of restaurants started to close down, even like the fast food restaurants. So it's going through a reconstruction era, specifically, and once unfortunately, it'll probably will go through gentrification again because the rent in our neighborhood has gone up exponentially, and it's too much for people to be able to live. So we'll see. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. 2 years ago. My grandfather passed away last year, and so her house is still there, and so we're gonna keep it, and we're going to try to create a space where hopefully the older people that still live there will be able to keep their house and not sell it, and not, their children might not sell it. So we're trying to have those conversations right now.
So the churches are still there?
The churches are still there. The oldest church, Shallow Baptist Church, is still there, and the AME Church is still there.
Okay. And
So
so most of the young people go outside of your community to get education beyond elementary, or do they have a high school there, or?
So the high school, there isn't a high school in the neighborhood, so they do have to go out of the neighborhood to go to the high school. Um, and also middle school. And so yeah, there's only one elementary school that's there. And it's a what they call a magnet school, in which you have to put your name in a lottery in order to be in that school. They the interesting thing is that they cut the school in half. There's a Spanish immersion part, and then there's the neighborhood school. And so in one school, you have two separate groups of kids. You have the neighborhood kids, and then you have the kids that are in Spanish immersion, which you have to apply and put yourself in the lottery in order to be in a part of the school. And the classrooms look totally different. The students are separated. They don't eat lunch the same time. They don't go out and play, have recess the same time. So they have really segregated these two groups within one school.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, anybody else has comments or questions for Niesha? So I see a Dr. Victoria Elder. I haven't seen you on Environmental Fridays before. I was just wondering where you're located and your
May I
interest in
introduce her?
this topic.
May I introduce Dr. Victoria Patricia Josephine Elder?
Okay.
She is a Trinidadian sitting in Trinidad. She is a stellar psychoeducational diagnostic and a professor of several courses in special education. She is a teacher of music. She is widely diversified, and she is an asset to the University of the Southern Caribbean and any other academic institution with which she's associated. For example, Andrews University. That's where she completed her doctoral work. Dr. Elder? I just did that because she's my friend. She's just awesome. Dr. Elder, would you say a few words, please? And she's the first elder at Point Fortin SDA Church. So she's an elder.
Okay. Well, I don't know if she's, while we wait on her, are there other questions, comments?
I put my email in the chat and also a link to the
Okay, yeah, I
book.
see that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, or you can also get it off Amazon, maybe cheaper on Amazon, but either way, it'll count. So, so yeah, so I just went ahead and put that in, and I do have to leave.
I know. That's why I was trying to get people to comment or ask questions here quickly. But yes, so let's bring it to an end. Sonia, you want to like close us
Could
out?
I ask a question?
Yes.
I gathered that um, the project that had brought the community up to food sufficiency,
Mhm.
with COVID, it went down. Has it gotten back up?
It's slowly getting there. We have the garden that we started at the church. It switched so many different hands. Right now, we have a person that is managing the garden, but she's doing it with minimal funding. So she has to have 2 or 3 jobs in order to sustain herself as in the living. But she's very passionate and wanting to continue to work in ag because she graduated from North Carolina A&T and with an agricultural degree in agricultural sciences, something like that. And then also the mobile market is not there anymore. It is housed at another university or another college, and they don't have that college has taken it over because the funding ran out for that. And that's another thing when things are grant funded, the money runs out and then sometimes you're able to find additional funding, sometimes you're not. And so no, so I would say the recovery period is slowly emerging, but there are a lot of things that were shut down and haven't been able to recover after COVID. And so it almost leads us back to the same predicament that we've been in. The last time I checked, which was maybe 2 weeks ago, with our county extension office, that we went back up to number 5 on the list for most food insecure cities.
Mhm.
So
And a follow up, do you see young people showing interest in this?
yes, I do see more young people showing interest. And it's specifically there are people who are college students who are not
Mhm.
from the state of North Carolina who have a lot of interest in wanting to help develop. But again, we have students, they might find a job somewhere else in a different state
Right.
and they just leave. And so yeah, I
But
think
the local young people.
yeah, the local young people. And
Okay.
it's a battle,
Yeah.
that's the challenge, trying to get people consistently involved. And even with me, like again, my work is not even in the city, the community where I started. My work is like 3 hours away. Um
Mhm.
and so I'm just now getting back into speaking with the people in the neighborhood and trying to support in however I can. So it's
Yeah,
challenging.
yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Murray, may
Yeah.
I take this opportunity to greet Dr. Hima Bablal, please?
Yes.
I did her presentation a few weeks ago. Dr. Hima, good morning. Is she with us?
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
And thank you, Ms.
Um,
Plus, may I connect you to a young man in North Carolina, please?
sure.
Lovely. Thank you. I've taken note of your email.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. So Dr. Douglas has another appointment or so coming up. So we need to bring today's event to a close. Sonia, you want to just say a few words really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Douglas, thank you so much for coming here this morning and spending your time with us. I can speak on behalf of all of us about how much we appreciated you sharing your journey and your work, and it's been a true honor to have listened to your journey. Um, Many of us are looking forward to connecting with you in the very near future as well. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your time with your work, and hoping that the situation gets better in terms of DEI as well. I know it's a big stressor that you mentioned earlier. So we're all going to work towards it. But once again, thank you so much, Dr. Douglas, and I hope you have a wonderful meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all
Thank
the support.
you.
And if you have any more questions or if you just want to connect, again, email me. My program has gone to a different phase now, more of implementation stuff. So I do have some flexibility. So yeah, just give me a call or a ring or email. And yeah, I can get in contact with you. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you so much.
Take care. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.